Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Long time no see. I'm still hard at work putting together an awesome video on the minimum wage for you all, but it's been a while, so I wanted to stop by and drop some content to hold you over. Over on my TikTok, we have a pretty active Q&A section. As is the nature with TikTok, I only have a minute to answer, but sometimes I wish I had more, so I've decided to take a few of my answers and record a YouTube cut for this channel, where I can take 4 or 5 minutes to answer and really stretch my legs out a little. Give me some feedback on this idea in the comments so I know how to tweak it going forward. For our first question, here's the answer TikTok saw. Comrade JD asks, with what political current or ideology do you identify? Are you a leftist? There's a lot of healthy debate around what these labels specifically mean, but I still think liberal suffices. I think that markets are pretty good at raising the median quality of living over time, but they really struggle on the margins, especially when capital has too much political power. When government fails to sufficiently regulate markets, they don't stay free. Powerful actors within the market will inevitably make healthy competition inviable. I also think that markets aren't very good at the allocation of justice and equity, whether that be legal, environmental, social, civil, etc. And when they fail, it often results in the infringement on an equitable pursuit of happiness. So labor before capital, demand before supply, and consumer before producer. I also value free expression, freedom from religion, and equal representation and enfranchisement. If I have any radical or extreme views about anything, it's probably those last two. Thanks for the question, and I'm happy to expand on anything else that you're curious about. One of the things I found really interesting about the feedback to this answer is how many people wanted to relabel what I had described. Whether someone was telling me that I'm a social democrat or a market socialist or a mutualist, it seemed like there was some general discomfort around me keeping the label broad, but that wasn't an accident. When it comes to describing my political ideology, I find specific labels to come with rapidly diminishing returns. You can talk to 5 different self-described social democrats and get 5 different ideas of what it means to be a social democrat. Additionally, a lot of these specific identifiers tend to put a really high emphasis on one specific area of politics, usually the economy. We'll touch on that more in a second, but that's why I find it helpful to keep it broad and stick with liberal. My goal in stating my ideology out loud is to give you a shorthand of where my political North Star is, and I feel like that does a sufficient job at that. I care about civil rights, individual rights, strong democracy, popular sovereignty, an equitable pursuit of happiness, and I think good government is instrumental in getting us there. I'm a liberal. The comments also made me think that answers to this question are considered by many almost solely in the context of the economy, and that sort of makes sense to me when I think about it, especially when you consider that many of the political theorists that are popular among the modern left were popularized because of their economic arguments. However, that just isn't the case for me. My ideology was heavily influenced by some economists and economic thinkers, but they by no means make up a plurality of those figures. I didn't build my ideology by asking myself what my ideal economy or labor market or capital market would look like. I built it by asking what my ideal America would look like. That's also why I was a little unprepared for questions that challenged my stance on capitalism. I mentioned capital in this answer, and it was sort of seen as a defense or preference for capitalism, which isn't necessarily the case, but I didn't mention capital because of a specific view on capitalism that I have. I mentioned capital because this is America, and I don't see a path to a version of this country where capital doesn't play a really big role. So it doesn't seem practical or productive to me to have a political ideology that doesn't make room for it. Not to criticize anyone who holds such ideologies, it's just not how mine was built. It's not built for a capitalist economy or socialist economy or communist economy. It's built for the American economy. It's built for American life. Before I wrap up, I would like to discuss a few thinkers who were fundamental in the development of my ideology to better illustrate how I think about political issues. This isn't an exhaustive list by any means, but it's a good start. And definitely don't take any of these names to mean that I share their ideology exactly. My ideology is my own. I didn't Xerox it from any of these people. I'll start with Angela Davis. Reading and listening to Davis influenced a lot of my ideas around complacency, moderation, and centrism. The idea that it's incumbent on us to educate ourselves to the point that we have strong, defensible opinions on things, and the dangers of fostering ignorance about controversial issues or riding the fence. A big light bulb went off in my head the first time I heard her say,
"You ask me, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all. Whether I approve of guns. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. Some very, very good friends of mine were killed by bombs that were planted by racists. I remember it from the time I was very small. I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking.
It showed me the importance of challenging the way narratives are framed. There are so many things that are asserted as truth but have very shaky narratives, and if we challenge narratives, we can reframe them. Reframing the narrative is one of the most powerful tools in influence and communication that we have. Next is Frederick Douglass, and I mention him because of what he taught me about the importance of dialogue. Douglass famously said, "I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong." It's really hard to truly understand whether someone means to do right or wrong without talking with them. And like Douglass, I've always had high confidence in my ability to articulate myself and communicate with others, so there are very few people that I will categorically refuse to have dialogue with out of turn. I find just as much enjoyment and value from talking politics with people I agree with as I do with people I disagree with, and the confidence I have in my own ideas and my ability to communicate with them while keeping the conversation de-escalated makes me confident that I will learn something from most political conversations. Douglass, in large part, taught me that. Douglass also taught me the importance of enfranchisement and representation. He spent most of his adult life advocating for black and women's suffrage because he knew how important the ballot box is to a person's rights. It's unlikely that there are any stronger political positions I hold than the belief that essentially everyone in America should be able to vote. Did you know that people as young as 13 years old can be tried as an adult in this country? Yet people lose their minds when you suggest granting suffrage to people under the age of 18. Additionally, everyone's vote should count equally, and everyone should have equal representation in federal government. It's the fundamental reason why I think the Electoral College must be eliminated, and why I believe that the Senate should be redesigned or abolished. But those are different topics for a different video. I'll close out with Vice President Henry Wallace. Wallace served alongside FDR, and I believe him to be one of America's great overlooked statesmen and progressives. Wallace was advocating for things like school desegregation, race and gender equality, and universal health care on the national political stage all the way back in the 40s. If you ever want to hear a crazy story about American political history, look into the 1944 Democratic National Convention. It's a wild ride. Maybe I'll do a video on that someday, but much of what I learned from him was actually by omission. He was so ahead of his time, but he stopped short of his potential because he lacked political skill and pragmatism, and there's an important lesson there. Anyway, there you go. Hopefully that gives you more context to my politics than the TikTok response did. Again, let me know what you think about these kinds of videos, and I promise that a video that is more of what you're used to on this channel is coming soon. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you don't mind, and I'll talk to you soon.